G'day and welcome. I thought I'd get some free news music to play. I thought it would look, well, it looks stupid, but I thought it'd be funny. Anyway, the reason I picked that though is this is kind of like the news. There's a few things going on here. Cleaning up's been the main thing, and I think that was in the last video. One of the things I wanted to clean up was under the house, which I didn't show, and it is absolutely to the brim with starlet parts. And I pulled them all out to make room for E.J. Holden parts. I was about to pull the E.J. Holden apart. Does that make sense? And needed somebody to store this stuff. So I've gone through sheds and all this sort of other stuff. At any rate, some of the starlet stuff is just junk. And it's not even the sort of thing you'd sell. It's just the stuff you'd throw out. Like I've got two, as an example, like charcoal canisters and right-end brake pedals. Brake pedals for 96, 97 cars. Haven't got one. You know, this sort of stuff, which I'm not going to use, seat runners or another thing. So I figured, you know what, I'm going to have a big clean up under there as well, so I can pull the EJ apart and, you know, move towards getting it in here. So what I thought I'd do is I found another starlet, don't yell, and it's been sort of half parted out, and the guy, it was actually a Minter before he parted it out. And the reason he did it was because he tried to advertise it, had a Roverly on it, but then the thrust bearing, I think, started playing up and he couldn't sell it. So I thought, you know what, bugger it, I'll part it out, and got his money that way. So I'm taking what's left, which is pretty complete, really, I mean, figuratively speaking. But I thought, you know what, it'd be pretty good if I could get a car for a few $100, use all this crap I've got to get it going, and either flog it off or just leave it for later on somewhere. So it's not going to be a resto or anything. It's going to be a one video deal where it gets here, we throw all these bits on, and it'll be done. Do you know what I mean? With exceptions to that thrust bearing. I'm not going to do anything with that at the moment. So that's the EJ and all those starlet parts. The Falcon is, I've got to check out this Plays, a friend's joint. It looks like there's some storage there for the Ford, the XD. I wanted to get it out of the weather. That's the main thing. And, you know, obviously free up more room that way. And of course my computer, and that's what this video will be on, is dated. I built one in 2006 and I used it for 10 years with Windows XP, never had a problem. And this one I put together in 2016, and so it's only, what, 6 years old this year. And I thought, rather than sort of formatting it and upgrading it and trying to find memory, because they keep changing memory and all that sort of stuff from board to board, and as the years go by, I thought I'd just build a new one. And so that's what this, I'll do that in this video. So if you just wanted to catch up with what I'm up to news-wise, this is it. On the Plymouth. I haven't actually done anything on that. I've got to put that back together, and that's going to be very soon as well, because there's parts inside that I really want to get back out. I don't like car parts inside. And, you know, so in this one we're just having the video, and then I pulled the chandelier off the garage roof. Susie wants it, and it was in a bit of a bad way, and of course there's a small segment on that in the titles. So not a video which is going to attract a huge amount of views, I wouldn't think, but this is what I have to do to get to where I want to go, if you know what I'm saying, in order to get, pardon me, room freed up and, you know, more cars in and cars out and that sort of stuff. So at any rate, I hope you enjoy. Right, it's time to talk about computers, and time to build myself a new one. Really, I've decided that the one I'm using at the moment is a little bit too outdated. This is the monitor I've been using. It's an Acer 23-inch. And I've replaced it with this lovely one here, which is an AOC, and it's a 27-inch, and it looks rather nice. Now, I'll just open it up, and the car guys will love to look at that. That's my XD Falcon soon after I painted it, over 15 years ago now. It doesn't look quite as good as that. Now, I'm a Windows user. In my job, I've been in my job for 20 years. First machine I had in it was an IBM ThinkPad. I think of it as a stinkpad because I had no end of trouble with it. I thought it was more to do with the department image and software conflicts and this sort of stuff, but it did have a couple of motherboards in it and a few other bits and pieces. It was very unreliable, and so since then the school had gone to Macs, and I've had a whole raft of Mac laptops, if you like, MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs in recent times, and before that the white laptops. And the Mac stuff I found was great. Although I do think a Mac's a bit like Kylie Minogue in that they're very good, but the marketing is sensational. Having said that, their hardware is great, particularly the Intel processed ones. They run Windows very well. But the problem I find with the Macs is they're a bit too restrictive and a bit under-spec for what I want to do. And the reason I like the Windows stuff is it's very easy to pick the peripherals you want, and therefore the specification. It all comes down to IBM compatibles being open license way back when, where anybody could produce peripherals for them, being an open license free of charge. But in saying that, they also produced viruses, where Macs are much more, or much harder policed, if you know what I mean, or more strongly policed, where a limited bunch of companies would build bits and pieces for them, and as a result, Apple had much more control. Hang on, we'll go back, we'll get another picture of this dog, Annie. We lost Annie a couple of years ago. The XW, we'll leave it there. So this is about building a new one. The machine I'm using at the moment is an AMD FX 6 core. I thought it was 10 years old, but it's not, it's only 5. I've got a bunch of things I'll show you in terms of its specification. Now, the reason I picked this monitor was $245, and I'm more interested really on what's on the back of the monitor than what's on the front. Now, if you look at the old one, tipping up, and we've got DVI and VGA, or SVGA. This AOC, this new one, has VGA as well as HDMI, so that's the reason we're going with that. Right, the machine I've built totals at $1,158. If you take away the monitor was $245. If you take that away and the copy of Windows 10, that was $140, $144. It comes to about $700 or somewhere around there, $720 or something. Basically, we've got an Aorus Gigabyte board. I always use Gigabyte boards, Seagate drives. I've never had a problem with them. That's the reason I always go with them. Some of the other boards I've got here because I got them second hand with a bundle of other used stuff. 4 terabyte drive is $109, and this is the reason I don't bother with clouds, because storage is cheap. $109 for 4 terabytes is chicken feed. I bought another 1 terabyte drive as well, just to use in a different machine. There's an OE CD writer, but we're not using a case that has 5 1/4 bays in it. And of course, I've also got a $35, external rewriter. 32 gig of RAM. I like Kingston, but I didn't get Kingston on this occasion. It's Corsair, which I've had before. Again, not a big deal. So the machine itself is very reasonable. Now, I use MSY technology in Mitcham, and they are fantastic. I used to use Universal PC Warehouse in Mitcham, but they've gone. And Scorpion Technology in Clayton. And that's where I got the case from, because MSY didn't have one I liked. Let's talk about the case, Enso Mesh. I'm going to get the case and show you. It is a great bit of kit, and it comes with an absolutely beautiful set of instructions here that shows you all around it. And the case is actually something I'm very excited about. Now, a lot of people put in about 6,000 or 7,000 fans into these things. There's only 2 there, plus there's a third in the power supply. So let's go get the case and have a bit of a look at that. Right, when I talk about cases, this is one of the old ones. This is a superpower. You used to get these at computer swap meets, very, very common. They were sort of modelling themselves a bit after the Macs sort of finished, the iMacs, with that lovely finish on them. Most cases of the 1990s were just horrible, bland, beige boxes which went yellow, and it's just started to go yellow here too. One of the reasons I picked these, aside from, where's my screw stick? Where is my screw stick? Aside from the fact that they looked a little bit more interesting than the standard beige box, was the way they were constructed. Now, anyone that's put computers together, I won't say built them, because we just sort of assemble them, don't we? We don't really build them as such. But anyone that's put one together will know that they are absolutely full of sharp edges. and most of them are just punched out, very, very cheaply made. The Superpower ones were quite often, this one's one of them, they had safety folds. And so you didn't get all those horrible sharp edges. All down here are safety folds, so you can run your hand up and down there and you won't cut yourself. All down here, they were just better, in my opinion. Also little things like a little lock tab if you want to put something there to stop people getting in, that sort of thing. I just found them to be much better, and of course they were very physically nice to look at. I've got, this is a purple one, it's missing this little light thing at the top here. I knocked that off with the E.J. Holden's crankshaft when I was moving it around. This normally lives in the garage, but I've got a blue one like that, and I've got one that looks like a Toyota Echo. It's got these plastic curvy sides and all that. They're actually quite interesting, but they had the foresight to start making machines that had a bit of a better look about them. I'll try and get a head-on shot of it. Things like concealed floppy drives, little vents and details there, but not details for the sake of it. They're actually aesthetically really, really good. Cases went through quite a bit of change over the years. Your 386, 486 first gen Pentium stuff, they tend to be much heavier set cases, and they're zinc plated. Very heavy lids. Quite often the lids are just sort of stretched over and you pull the whole thing off as one, so they're tricky to get back on, but they're much, much more robust, and you have your sort of processor speed displayed at the front with little turbo button and all this sort of stuff. That's a thing of the past. Those sorts of cases now are worth a lot of money. Very hard to find because people tend to hang on to them. Let's talk about this case here. This is the new one I've bought, $99 at Scorpion Technology, absolutely outstanding value. The first thing is it comes with a garnish at the top, so you can actually cover up your vents. They're magnetic, so you probably don't want to run these up and down your hard disk, but there's room for fans under there. There's two 120mm fan mounts, which you can have your gauze on top. You can have that on top anyway if you just want normal ventilation, or you can blank it off. I absolutely love that. And the other thing that I do like about this case, if we flick him over and lift him up, there's a little tab at the bottom. You can take that whole front off for cleaning, blow it out with compressed air, and you're good as gold. And of course, again, we've got room for another two 120mm fans. It comes with one, which doesn't light up. I think the one at the back does, but this one doesn't, and I don't care because I don't go for that. But there are a bunch of sort of decorative LED sort of arrays around the edge, if you like. Of course, on the side, we've got a lovely bit of tempered glass, and it is proper glass. These things are covered in plastic, or it's covered in plastic. And when we're finished sort of putting the thing together, we take the inner bit of plastic off, and whoops, Bob's your uncle. So that will just come off, and it's proper plastic, glass, sorry. I'll just pop this over here. And of course, there's the inner gubbins of it. Another thing I really think is fantastic about this machine, or at least this case, is it's got a slide-out filter for the power supply. Really important, because this thing draws its air from underneath, and I always put this on the carpet underneath the thing, underneath the desk. So I'm really happy with that too. It doesn't come, I don't think it comes anyway, with any shields. The shields are always part of the board now. Let's just pull this off and see what's behind here. They probably just come back. I'm just having trouble doing it with my fingers. Yeah, just undo it like that. That's pretty easy. And you've got that conventional sort of slide that drops off to divulge the gubbins inside, or the features inside. Let's have a look. Obviously, we've got some lighting happening here. A little bit of hardware in here. So we can pop our, actually I'll just take that whole caddy out. Let you just undo it like that, don't you? There's a couple of drive bays and some hardware, which we're going to need. So we can stick the hard disk in and at least start assembling this thing here. There's a few things with this. You've got to use an anti-static strap. I had one years ago, I don't know what's happened to it. I did computer field service and box seal tape, diploma in electronics, and ended up doing that. And consequently, I haven't still got some of the bits and pieces I had there. And also, I'll show you a couple of things that they used to teach, which probably don't even relate these days. So I'm going to put the power supply in first, because what I like to do is I like to have it plugged in the wall. it can be off, the wall plug can be off as well, but you're using the earth pin. When you touch the case, of course, you ground it then, and static being a problem with electronic components isn't going to be such an issue. This case just impresses me the more I look at it. In the box of, or in the little bag of bits and pieces, you get spare knurled nuts, you get a little PC speaker, some cable ties, your coarse threads for your hard drives, all that sort of stuff, a couple of little piers to screw in. Really, really well thought out, good stuff. The drive we're going to use is a Seagate Barracuda. I just love Seagate stuff because I've never had one mess up. I used to buy Quantum when I first started with the computers. Quantum became quite expensive, I thought, and I was always going to buy Bigfoot and Little Border, which would be very slow by today's standards, but the Seagate stuff is just wonderful. A lot of people like their Western Dig and Maxter and this sort of stuff, but for me it's always been Seagate. So I'll put that in a moment, but again, before I take it out of that anti-static bag, I just want to make sure I'm earthed out. So we'll just pick some appropriate screws for the power supply. And these guys look just about fine. The hex ones, the original hex type. Another thing I like about this, all the switches are on the top. You know, power, reset, we've got one for LEDs as well there. The earphone and microphone, and a couple of USB 3s. And that's always where you're going to be resting your backup drives and that sort of stuff on the top of it when you're using it. I'm going to go around the other side, we'll put the power supply in. This thing's going to be drawing from underneath. That's where our cooling fan is, behind there. So I'm just going to pop that around. And another thing I like is the fact that you can turn it on and off separately or independently. And that should just fall in like that and sit where I want it to sit, which is there. Something like that. I'm just going to do this because these cables are going to get in the way and they're quite heavy. They've got extra cabling for graphics cards and all sorts of stuff. And these ones are marked. So I'm really happy with the quality of the hardware we've got here. All it has to do is work and I'll be really impressed. Right. I'll just get some gravity happening and tighten him up. Go around the camera there. Now this computer is purely for YouTube videos, not making it, or building it, or assembling it, whatever you want to say, but in the operation of it. I'm just going to try and move that over a bit. That's all I use these for, a bit of internet browsing, but let's face it, you can do that with any machine. But I'm more interested in speed for putting together these movies, or videos that I do, which I only use 1080p when I sort of put them together. But, oops, dropped a bit of paint, but no one cares. Right, so by plugging that in now to a PowerPoint, it's going to be safe to touch the case. And we can verify that by doing a continuity test between here and the case. And it's all good. This isn't perfectly necessary to do this, but I always do anyway. Any wiring I do, I always check for earths by using continuity. And I can check between the earth pin on the plug and the case. That's not doing anything. So you should be able to go around any of these points. So yeah, okay, so that's a point where the motherboard will earth. But more importantly, some of these don't. And it's handy to know which ones do and which ones don't, because I will touch them. So any of these board mount posts, I can just put my finger on and I know I'm earthing myself out with this plugged in. So look, probably not necessary, but it's a force of habit. I'm a car guy and I wire up cars and motorcycles and that sort of stuff. And so it's nice to know that everything's sort of working before you stick any juice in. These ones are controlled by the board too, I think. These are for the fans, the cooling fans. So that's all good. That also can go onto the board instead. It's got a board header as well as a power one. So that's cool, I understand all that. There's these rubber boot things here in the top of the screen, if you can see. That's for all your cabling to go through. For these, I'm not going to thread any of that through yet because I'm not ready to put the board in. I will stick the hard disk in though. And the hard disk sort of just slides in. I'm going to use the upper bay just so there's airspace sort of underneath it. Right, so the machine's plugged in to the wall, it's not turned on. I can earth myself out against motherboard headers and all that sort of stuff. Putting peripherals together on a piece of bubble wrap is probably a stupid idea because it's not anti-static, and you just don't want to be damaging the components by doing it this way. But I'm just going to pull that out, stick that on there, and this is actually quite cool because they've got little markings so you can have an SSD. The SSD mounts there, and their conventional 3.5-inch hard disk mount. It's going in that way, so that will, there's little fan or male bits on there that go into the drive itself, into the side mounting holes on the drive, which is cool. Right, if I can figure out how to put them, just a minute. Yep, that looks fairly cool. So it's got like a double way of mounting, if you see what I mean. Those little male protrusions are going in, so the hard disk is secure without even putting screws in, but I will put some in because, well, I can. Actually, I'll just stick that there. And we can just zip it up. It's like doing fun Meccano this. The reason I say it's not really building, we're assembling, is because if you go back to your 386, 286, 386 days, you think about your MFM and your SD drives, they're all manually configured, and a bit of a pain if you get it wrong. There was a lot more skill involved, where this is just all you plug it in, if it doesn't work, you've done something wrong. It's not a configuration issue in most cases. All your interrupts and your addressing and all that sort of stuff is all automated. So it'll just slide in. My lovely little 4 terabyte. So I'll just pop that in. And we can sort of plug that up later. That should just slide in. How does it slide in? Slides in between there, you goose. Perfect. Good to go. I'm happy with that. I'll just put that in. That's our little, whoops, filter system for the power supply. Right, let's have a look at the board. Right. Comes with some SATA cables and a sticker for the computer and driver disc and card and booklet. I love Gigabyte stuff, always used it, never had a problem with it. I used to like getting the dual BIOS ones because I did have, what's always an MSI board I think, and it fried when I was trying to do a, I think the power went out when I was trying to do a flash update on the BIOS, and of course I couldn't get it working again. That could have been my fault, I'm pretty sure it was. But anyway, what's up with this guy? And again, we need to earth ourselves. I should be using a static strap, but I just haven't got one. Perfect. Look at it go. Look at that. Anyway, a couple of things. Let's have a bit of a shtick here. The shield is now built onto the boards here. So you used to get those sort of plates with different configurations for different boards, with motherboards and also with cases that quite often bundle them in there. This one's all sort of integral with the board itself, so we can just take that tape off to divulge its beauty. Zip socket, 0 insertion force, pretty common. Everyone knows about those. For a while, Intel went to slot 1 and all this sort of stuff. It was nowhere near as nice. 370, socket 3, 5, 7, it's all zip socket and all the modern ones as well. The memory, obviously here. Got a couple of PCIs, one's shielded for some reason, and of course the SSD goes in there. And I've got to get a small screwdriver for the SSD, so I'll go and get that in a moment. And familiarise myself with all these headers here. So we've got a USB 2, communications port, serial port, power in here, we've got fan headers, we've got all sorts of stuff. So, before we go too much further, another thing I like to do is have the board without its piers, if you know what I mean. The piers are these little stand things that I'm talking about. They've got earth points on them, around them. I like to plug everything on when the board's supported completely all around it, not just on its peers inside the machine. So particularly things like processor fans, which can be quite difficult to get on sometimes, or at least there's a bit of force involved with it, and same as RAM. They're the things that I like to do while the board is out of the computer and on to a stable surface like this. Right, this is my old technician's case. Oops, it's upside down. It's heavy though. I think it's basically full of crap. Okay. Now, this is what I'm interested in. All my parts, my fitting kit. This is just from doing this stuff for years. And it's interesting. What I've got to do, there's another one. Hang on, where's the other one? I think there's just plugs and stuff in there, isn't it? Soltec, they were a great board. I remember those. There's nothing else I need in there. Okay. Fibre washers, they always used to ship these things with fibre washers. See these match heads? We'll talk about those match heads and those fibre washers in a sec. Right, match heads and washers. What we used to get taught back in the old days is you'd stick a match head, oh look, it's broken, in each of these little receptacles, and then you would put your washer over the match head, like that. And what they would do then is they'd place the board over each of the sort of matchsticks, and did I say match head? I was talking about matchsticks. And then they would poke through the board. Then you'd sort of hold it down, pull the stick out and stick the screw in. And that way the board was supported on a fibre washer. I don't think anyone does that now. That's what we were taught at Box Hill many years ago. But one thing I do need to ascertain is where all the holes are. We've got 3 across the top. Yes, we do. We've got 1, 2, 3 across the midsection. And we've got 1 there, and there's 1 that just goes in there, and then we're good. Then everything's covered. That's cool. So we'll take that out. And it's this one here. So that way there's no fuss. When I go to put it in, I know exactly how it fits. Right, so now we know all that's going to fit. This is the cool bit. We're going to put some stuff in. And we're going to start with the SSD. There's a little screw here. I'm going to pop that out. And the SSD, this is a Western Dig. This is just for Windows. The 4 gig we're stuck in, or 4 terabytes we're stuck in, is just for storage. So this is the Windows drive, so it'll be nice and quick to boot up. This is an NVMe, which stands for, no idea, but I did read about it. And that's all it is. Western Digital Blue, come on, get out of there. Okay, make sure I'm nice and earthed, which I am. And that little bloke looks like it goes in here. And it sits up on a 15-20 degree angle. And we just put that little screw in, and that holds it in. That's a hard disk, believe it or not. Great stuff. We'll just cinch it. We don't have to go too far tightening that down. Alana's just walked in. She's probably cooking dinner. Are you cooking dinner, miss?
I don't know.
Corsair's never been my first choice. Kingston is, but you know what? We're good. I reckon we just stick this stuff in and be done with it, huh? This is DDR4, and it's always important to check the speed of the memory out and the specification of it in the manual just to make sure it fits, which we've done that, so we're good. Earth ourselves out and stick it in. And I'm going to go with the first 2 slots. And it's going to go this way. I don't think this lights up. Some of them just light up like a beacon. But again, because there's a bit of energy involved with pushing this home, that's why I like it to be flat on a table like this, because it's less likely to crack or cause trouble with the board. Even though it's probably quite a remote thing, I'm not sure. I plugged in the drive. There were your power leads, and they're just sort of tied together here and just pushed in there. The only ones that I need coming through is a power lead for the CPU, and of course the ATX connector, some USB 3 and some other bits and pieces, including those little headers for the switches and all that sort of stuff. So not sure what that does, not sure it matters, but I'm going to put the board in now. I didn't want to until I got the CPU, but there's a postage delay with the CPU. I ordered it from Scorptech, The case got here a day later. The CPU looks like it's going to be another week. Right, we'll stick the board in. Again, we're plugged in and earthed. Not a bad idea to check which fasteners are used, which screws are used. And they're also, these ones are smooth, but the case mounted ones actually have a serration on it which scrapes through the paint. These ones don't. They're just your fine threads, the same as you would use in a CD-ROM or something like that. Right. And again, I'm kind of regretting it because we haven't got the CPU yet, and I didn't want to put this in until I had the CPU. But beggars can't be choosers. I've got no room. And so we're just going to start these. And you can see they're all black and they're finished off quite well. The other thing that I like about this case, that I love about this case, is all the wiring is concealed under there, so it's quite a visual thing, but that's more for airflow as well. Not that I'm expecting this will get very hot at all. It's not a gaming machine as such, even though it's configured for it in a sense. We still don't have, I've already put a screw there. We still don't have a decent video card really. We're using the onboard capability of it. And the rest of it's just about as neatly and tidily plugging this thing in. Is that the right way? Yes, that is the right way. And we've got these lovely ducts, so that hides all the cabling. Oopsie. That one's going to go right up there, I think. If I can see what the heck I'm doing. This is just connections. So it's a very small block. Here, I'm going to put the torch sort of on its side, and you can see the right one. You can see the right one there. That's where these guys go. The audio plug, USB 3. There's actually nothing to it. The CPU thing, the ATX, and that's about it really. I've just got to get that CPU in there. I'm going to muddle with this thing here. So the trouble is my eyes let me down. So I do find, okay, hard disk is positive. Where's hard drive? Right, there it is. And positive is on that side, so that just goes in there. And you can sort of clip this and make it look nice. It's fiddly. It always is doing these things. But what do you do? This has been remarkably boring. There's not much left in it, really. I'm going to go into SATA 0. There's going to be that one there. We'll turn him up and plug the hard disk in. That has nothing in it. It's amazing how much fits in if you think of what was in a PCXT or a 286 or whatever. A couple of things. 1 gig hard disk, 32 gig of RAM. The CPU's still got to go in, can get to all the headers and all this sort of stuff. I've clipped the cabling, I've put a PC speaker in. I want to hear the beep, the post beep, and all the other ugly stuff is sort of contained in here. I don't think there's any necessity to put another fan in. It all looks quite tidy from the front. And all that stuff just stashes in behind there, where your 3.5-inch bays are. These are an afterthought. I'll show you something with the case, but I'll flip it over first. Here on this side, on the back, is where all the mess is, which is cool. It doesn't matter. And it gives you these anchor points here to clip or cable tie, pardon me, as much stuff as you want to sort of tidy it up, if you know what I mean. I'm fussy with this sort of stuff, but sometimes you just can't polish a turd. Do you know what I mean? You know, it doesn't matter. A good idea is to keep data cables away. I'm a little bit worried because the SATA cable down here is right between all the power cables, and I don't want crosstalk because that can corrupt data and all that sort of crap. Stop the machine working the way it's supposed to. And we want to try and avoid that. It keeps the front looking nice. But it's actually, from a gaming point of view, it's not just about aesthetics, as I said before, it's also about cooling. And airflow and all that sort of lovely stuff. You don't want to miss with those, do we? But that's probably acceptable to leave just like that. And I don't want to put any duress on the SATA cable, so I'm leaving that unclipped. I actually bent the other side of it so it reaches into the board with minimal fuss. I'm not going to put additional fans in. It's got a hardware monitor of sorts in it, and so I don't think it's completely necessary. But it's just, there's a lot of design gone into it, and it almost looks too simple. Right, here's our processor. It's an AMD Ryzen. It's a Ryzen 5, but it's the G, the 5600G, so it's the graphics built in, which is always a compromise. They're slower than the X, but yeah. I've cut along there, but I haven't opened it yet. Let me get the thing open. And it's all about presentation, right? There's the processor sitting out there looking rather nice. Lots and lots of pins. And that'll be a cooler, I would think. Yes, it is. Let's have a look at this. If we can ignore the dog drinking. Ooh, that's rather monstrous. Oopsie, here we go. The best thing to do with this, again we have to earth ourselves, is to stick this in the motherboard, I reckon. Nice. I think that's pin 1 there. This is a ZIF socket, so 0 insertion ports. On the chip itself, there's an arrow there. That's pin 1. Actually quite heavy. And so that should just fall in. Something like that. Perfect. But to take these fan brackets off the board that are held on with these machine screws, and then the sort of base plate off the back, which had the threaded sections in, fell off. So take the cover off the back, hold that up while I screwed that on. It screws down to a predetermined tightness, if you like. So just plug this CPU fan header in. I need to do it neatly if I can. Well, that's it. How bare bones does that thing look? There's just nothing to it. Anyway, I shall go and power it up and see what happens. Okay, so I've had all sorts of trouble with the hard disk. It's not the fault of the drive, but it was set up as an MBR disk, a master boot record one. That's the SSD with Windows on it. They're the two partitions, and that is that little guy, which is a little backup drive. The rest of it's looking really good. We've got this fan going here. That one's not. That's on a temperature thing, I think. It just looks so bare. There's nothing in it. Which is kind of bizarre, really. I've just got to put the cover back on. But for those who care, you get this light effects. That's a red and a green and a blue, and what's this one? Kind of pale blue, I don't know. Different colours. That's a nice vibrant blue. And some of them orange. Where is it? Green. Red again. And some of them sort of alter themselves. You can't really see how vibrant they are on the camera, but I'm boring, so I'm going to have it off for now. Well, there you go. That's all done. That fan at the back I haven't connected as a constantly running thing. It's on a temperature node on the motherboard, and it's the kind of thing I would have thought should run anyway, because that's like an exhaust fan for the case, but I'm not too worried about it. Everything's cool as a cucumber in there. You can see the other machine I've got plugged in behind. I'm just zipping up this movie. But look, I'm really happy with this now. It seems to be very, very fast, a lot faster than what I've got. I haven't got movie editing software on it yet, but that can come later, and I'll really run it through its paces then. Anyway, whatever the case, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon. chandelier resto. This is out of the garage, and my ex-wife wanted it, and she is most welcome. I just thought I'd clean it up a little bit for her. Just working, as you can see, it's been sitting in the garage for 15 or so years. These just all come off and they've got to be cleaned up. That's an example of what the crystals look like. They're pretty knackered. In fact, I washed one of these. They came out like that, and it's just rinsing it. It's not even with soap. It comes up beautiful. This is a proper crystal one. Anyway, I've got to figure out how to do this because I'm going to do it up properly for her, or at least semi-properly. Hang on, I'm just going to get that in there. And I just want to make sure it's good and safe and, all this sort of other stuff. And clean it up as best I can. So I'll strip it down first. These just spread open, and the candle, sort of the fake wax stuff, sort of holds those in against here. But it's all good fun. I like doing this sort of thing. I mean, if I didn't like doing it, I wouldn't offer to do it for her, I suppose. But she particularly wanted it, so she can particularly have it. Now these things tend to screw on, I think. And then you've got that washer. It's quite interesting how they're put together. So this stuff will all clean up really, really well, and that plastic's still good and flexible, so that's not a bad thing given it's been so neglected. I thought it'd be safe hanging up in the garage. It'd be the safest place for it because storing these things is terrible. And I had a tennis ball hanging on a string so that when my wife drove in, she knew how far to drive in because the tennis ball had hit her screen or would just touch it. Anyway, my son started playing racquetball with it and he kept hitting this. Anyway, life's good, eh? There's a grommet that's coming off there. There it is. Little grommet for that. Bloody hell. There's nothing alive in there, is there? Alright, we need to go through this properly. How are these held on? Oh, they're just screwed in. God. Let's have a look. I'm glad I went in here actually. And that cable should withdraw, although it's not going to be easy to get out. How do I get this off? Oh, it's got another one up there. Just a moment. Let us have more of a look. Oh goodness. I'll tell you what, there's more inside this chandelier than I ever would have given it credit for. It's just a plastic cup and a bit of crystal. We're good. And then this guy is going to come out of here. With those at the base, so they go down to the bottom. Well, I've washed it all up. Those globes aren't going back in, but the crystal stuff came up absolutely beautiful. I didn't bother on doing all these, it was just a pain in the neck, so I'll put those back on that one there. I'll leave them. I'm not going to do any more, I'll just let it dry. I shouldn't have wet all the wiring, but yeah, I didn't get it very wet, so it'll dry right. Might just paint that because that goes against the ceiling, but it came up beautifully. Absolutely lovely. Look at that. Isn't it sweet? So, yeah, I think it's going to be fine. Oh, and that's the little bit that was all brown hanging down from underneath. Kind of hangs off a nut. Some of these, that's actually brass, I think. Might try and just shine that up a bit. So I can get that out. It's quite interesting though. Right, so I'm just going to pop this on. I've taken the whole thing apart and put it back together. I've just had to paint a nut that goes on the bottom. I thought it was brass and it's not, it's just rusty steel. But that's alright. These just screw on, it's all fairly self-explanatory. And very difficult to get it wrong, but again, if it's an electrical thing, you can get it wrong. These sort of hold those tabs in around the light socket. And there you go. So I've just got to put these on. These can hang, these crystals, and Suzanne can do that when she gets it. And we're pretty much out of it now. Right, well, that's all too bad. I've just wired it up to a plug. And I've only put on those 3 crystals at the bottom, so I've got to pack it in a box. Hopefully that doesn't break. So be careful with these things. I've had a broken crystal, so she can bring these when she gets them. They're all nice and cleaned up, and that thing sort of screws onto the bottom and hangs down. But it's actually, whoa, it came with this sort of thing here, which says genuine Czechoslovakian, what does it say? I don't know if you can see that. Genuine Bohemian crystal chandelier. And made in Czechoslovakia, so it's pre-Czech Republic days. But anyway, look, that'll do. I'm happy with that. What do you reckon? She haven't. Jesus. Move. Move, cat. Move. Move. Come on. I think it.